Now, you'll notice in lesson 3 here, I have just started up where we left off on part 2, and that is, remember, we made this little application. We just added some controls to it, and I was showing you how to run your project and showing you how these things work. And I said we need to make some changes to this because it's not very descriptive, and it's not going to tell our customers or our friends what they can do with this. So here's what I want to do. I want to stop my program, because remember, we have to stop it in order to make changes. And I want to show you a couple things that we want to do. Now, first of all, I'm going to close the toolbox because I'm not going to add any more controls. We've got enough on there already. What I'd like to do is to teach you how to change what these buttons say, because we don't want it to say button 1, button 2. That's kind of silly. I want to change what these say, and I want to also change what the label says. But I also want to show you how to change what it says on this form. I don't like putting out projects that say Form 1, Form 2, Form 3. I want you to learn how to put something on there that makes it look much more professional. So we want to change that. Now here's how you change stuff. I'm going to change this button first. I'm going to click on this button. Now, I want to warn you about something. If you double click on the button, you're going to jump into a whole new window here that I'm not ready to talk to you about. If that happens to you, just come up here. See this X over here on the right? And just close that one tab. You want to be up here where it says the name of your form, .vb, because that means it's a Visual Basic file. And you want to be in design mode. That's what this is right here. It has a little asterisk next to it because that means that it hasn't been saved. And as soon as I save it, the little asterisk goes away. So that's just a little reminder that you need to save. What I want to do is I want to change the button. So what you want to do is you want to single click on these things that you want to work on. Don't double click them yet. Okay, that's for something in the next video. I'm going to click on this one button, but I want to change what it says. So let me show you a couple options. When you right click on that button, you come up with this little context menu, and you can come down here to where it says Properties, and it brings up a Properties box. You see that? Now I'm going to close this for a minute. I'm going to show you the way I do it. I click on an item. Let's say it's this one or this one. And I push the F4 key on the keyboard, and it brings up what's called the Properties window or the Properties box. Now here's something I want you to write down. A property is like a characteristic of an object. Property is like a characteristic. You and I have all kinds of characteristics. I have height, I have hair color, eye color, weight, language, everything. Those are all characteristics about Ron, right? They don't say anything about how I do things. They just describe me. If you're thinking in terms of in English, they would be nouns. They're descriptors. All right. And here's a listing of all the things that you can change for a button in Visual Studio. And Microsoft has already designed these for us. And what I like to do, I'm going to adjust this. Many times when you start at Visual Studio, it will be organized in such a way that all these properties are organized by categories. You see this? Behavior, data, and that drives me crazy because I don't remember all of these anyway, and let alone what category they're in. So what I recommend you do is this. You see this little A to Z button? Click on that and it alphabetizes these. And you guys, it's so much easier. The only one that's not alphabetized is something called the name. You see the name up here? I'll come back to that in a minute. But all the rest of them are all alphabetized. Now here's what I want you to kind of write down and keep track of. Most of these you will never use. They have more stuff here than you ever think about using, but there's some that you use all the time. And the one that I want to use is something called the text property. You see that? I want you to make a note that for all of the objects in Visual Studio, whether it's VB, C#, doesn't matter, buttons, text boxes, labels, when you want to change what those things say on the screen, you're going to change their text property. So you see up here where it says button 1, I don't want it to say button 1. So what I want to do is I want to come in here and change this to something else. Now there's a couple ways to do it. What I do is I just double click where it says text, and it highlights where it says button 1. Now when it's highlighted, that means I can go ahead and type. Okay? And let's see, we'll have one that says print. And I just type print and I hit enter to lock it in. And you notice as soon as I do that, my button changes to the word print. Let me show you another way to do this. A lot of people, there's just different ways of doing this. People come in here with the mouse and they erase this, okay, and then they just type. If I don't like that, now you're going to notice what I do is I double click on it and that highlights it, and then all I have to do is change what it says. And I can say click me, I can say whatever I want. It doesn't matter. This is what your customer is going to see, and you just tell it to do whatever you want to do. Now for this button, I'm going to come down and change its text property. I'm going to double click on it, and I'm going to say clear. We're going to use that for something else. And then on the last one, button 3, I'm going to change it to say close to exit our program. But let me show you a trick. You notice I just clicked here. I didn't click anywhere in the properties window, but I can go ahead and type quit, because Visual Studio remembers, hey, the last time he was in here, he changed the text property. Did you notice that? So they just have some little shortcut things here for you that make it easy to change these and make it very fast. All right. Let's go ahead and change our radio button. Now, in this case, we're going to go down here to the text property just like before. I'm going to change this to say full time. This is like if you were a full-time student. We're going to click this one and say part-time, and you notice this time I did not click over there on the text property. I'm just typing because Visual Studio remembers that's the text property he was working on last time. And full-time, part-time, or the other option would be maybe, well, you know what? Maybe there isn't anything other than full-time, part-time. You know what I'll do? I'm going to show you this. If you decide you don't need one of these controls, just like I've decided maybe I don't need this, let's click on it, just highlight it like that, and hit the delete key on your keyboard, and let's just get rid of it. Now, if you ever need one again, you can go back to the toolbox and get one, or you can do this. Check this out. I can click on this one, say I want a radio button after all. I need to add one. I can click on that, and I can do Control-C on my keyboard to copy it, or I can right-click and say copy. Then I'll click just on my form somewhere, and I'll say paste, and it'll add another one of those controls, and I can bring it back. Okay? That cool? But I don't really think I need that, so let's just get rid of it. All right. Now these checkboxes work differently than radio buttons. You notice with a radio button you can only have one on at a time. That's what it's designed for. But sometimes you need to have a situation where someone can request more than one thing, and that's what I'll do here. Let's change this text box, and we'll go down to that object's text property, and we'll change it to newsletter. Like, do they want to get our newsletter? And then we'll make the other one say email. Well, we'll just call it mailing list. Okay? Do they want to be on our mailing list? Now they have an option. They can get the newsletter, and that's all. They can get just the mailing list, or they can get both of them, or they can get none of them. All right? So now that we've changed those, let's push F5 on our keyboard just to run it, and let's just check them out. The buttons still work. They don't do anything yet, right? We just changed what they say, but I think you'll agree they're starting to make more sense. The newsletter, it works just like before, and our option buttons are still working. Good. I didn't break anything. Okay, I'm going to close my application, and I usually just come up here and click on this, you guys. And I come back here, and I want to change a couple more things. This text box, we're going to get their first name in. All right, so I want to change it to reflect that. This one's going to be our last name text box. But before I change what these things are, let's go ahead and change our label, because I want you to see how to do something with the labels. Now, I have a pet peeve about these labels. If you put a label on there and you try to resize it, like make it bigger, it doesn't do anything. So let me show you how to fix it. You click on it once and you push F4 and you open up your properties window. Now it may already be open. And check up here, it says label 1. That means that's the property for that label. You also have a drop down list here, and I can go back and change the properties of of my calendar. I can go change the selection of the button. So it's just a different way of selecting these things. You can do it that way. I'm really not used to doing that, to tell you the truth, so you won't probably see me do that. But on the label, let me show you how to fix this so that you can resize it if you want to. See, it has a property called auto size, and it's set to true. Well, if you'll set it to false, then look, now my label, I can move it around much more like what you would expect. See? And I kind of like that. Now I'm going to change what my label says, and remember what property we go to? Text property. And I'm going to type in here first name. Now I also want to show you something. When I type in these properties, you guys, hit your enter key to lock it in. Okay? Now there's first name. Now notice what it says. It says first name right here, and it looks nice, right? I'm going to do the same thing to this label. I'm going to come up and change its auto size to false. Now watch. Quick way. You can just double click auto size. Notice as I'm double clicking, it changes from true to false. See that? So you don't have to go over there and mess with this little drop down thing, but you can if you want to. However you want to work. Auto size is false, and I'm going to come down and change its text property. Remember, the text property on all these controls determines what the object actually displays on the screen. So I'm going to have this one say last name. Gosh, I keep forgetting the capital here, and hit enter. I also want to show you, if you want to, how you can. Now I'm going to move this around just a little bit. How you can change the look of this. I'm going to close this down a little bit. In other words, we can change the font or the color or anything here too. Let's go do that. Let's do first name, and over to the properties. If you click on font, you can actually change the different kind of font. I can make it a little larger if I want to. Let's make it 10, and I hit enter. Notice it's bigger. See? All right. And let's say I decide to change the color of it, the foreground color. It's a 4-color font, they call it. And if you click on it, it brings up all these little boxes. And typically I just go to custom, and I'm just going to pick a blue just so that it shows up a little better. And you'll notice over here it looks, it looks a little nicer. The last name, we'll do the same thing. We'll go change its color to blue, and we'll change its font to 10 so that it matches. And in case you're thinking about it, yes, you can change all of these labels at the same time. Let me show you. If I click on this one, I hold the control key down and I click on this one. Now I've got both of my labels selected. I can come over here, and if I say bold, true, watch, it'll change them both to bold. See how that is? And if I don't want that, I change it to false. Now you notice on the form they both went back. If I don't want them both blue, well, I can pick something else. I can pick from a web color too. Look at all these cool colors you got. So if I decide I want to make it a sandy brown color, see how that is? Now that doesn't show up very well, so I'm not going to leave it that way for you guys. I'm going to stick to some kind of a blue. I'll do a medium blue, just so it shows up on the screen for you. So here's my point. You can change properties for all of the different controls. You can change them one at a time, or you can select them like I did, a whole bunch at a time, and make them look just like you want. Let's change what this form says. We've kind of changed this other stuff. See this up here where it says Form 1? I don't like that. We don't want to do that. So click on your form. Now be careful that you haven't clicked on a control. Click on a form, push F4 if this properties window is not up there, and just make sure it says Form 1 right here. See how this is? Form 1. And now let's go to its text property. The text property of the form is going to change what it says up in this caption bar here. All right? So let's just say learning, you type whatever you want. Learning to program in VB. Okay? And I'm going to hit enter and lock it in, and you notice immediately what it says on my form changes, and that looks so much nicer, doesn't it? Okay. Now let's do one last thing here. Let's run this thing. Let's push F5. I forgot to save it, but I want you to save it. And notice, let's just make sure everything's still working. Okay, I didn't mess up anything, did I? No. Everything's still working. And I can type in my text boxes. I'm just typing junk. That's how I do it to test you guys. You don't have to actually type anything useful. And my calendar control is still working. That's cool. Okay. Now I'm going to close this and I'm going to save it. And what I want to do in our next video is actually do some things so that when we click on these things, something happens to our program. All right, but let's review real quickly. What we did was we put objects on here. We call them controls. We just put controls on here, and we changed what they say. We changed what the label says. We changed what these say. We changed what these say. Now there's a couple other things I need to do to this, but I'm going to do that in the next video. But I want you to recognize that the properties of an object describe their characteristics: the size, the color, the position they are on the form. And you can change their colors most of the time, the font. You can align them different places. There's all these different things you can do. Just make sure that you click on the right object before you start changing its properties. Okay? That's all you have to do first. And we're doing single clicking, not double clicking. All right? Now let's come back in the next video and I'm going to show you how to add one more control, and then we're going to add some functionality to this so that it can actually do some stuff fun. Okay?